Welcome into a very special Halloween edition of the Hot Read podcast for Wednesday, November the 1st. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and you can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am not yet joined by producer JT, who will be joining us later in the episode, but I am joined by a friend of the show, Junnie Riddle, aka Mr. Incredible, today of 102.5 The Game here in Nashville. Junnie, thank you for joining me on our live recording on this Halloween afternoon. How are you?
Doing great, Easton, man. How are you? Appreciate you letting me come on to talk some ball. We got a big game coming up for the Tennessee Titans, so I'm excited to dive right into it.
Very big game, very exciting game. I've had a couple of different buddies who are Titans fans text me this week and say, I have not been this excited for a Titans game in a good long while. And it's crazy how much one game can change. It is crazy how much a fresh quarterback in the rotation, a promising quarterback in the fold, can mean for fans and their excitement level. And we're going to talk all about a team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, that you know a lot about. That's why we had you on today. You are an expert when it comes to the Yinzers. And so we needed some of that insight on today's show. Of course, I am dressed as a giraffe today. I'm not just dressed as any giraffe. I don't know. Are you familiar with the age-old viral video, the folks that are taking a picture on a ski slope, and then a guy wearing a giraffe onesie comes flying by them and just screams, "I'm a giraffe!" Are you familiar with this video?
I have not seen that
It's
clip.
an old school video. It was very popular on Vine. Was very popular on the internet. I'm gonna JT in post. Can we please let's insert that video right here for the people? Thank you very much. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just YouTube "I'm a giraffe" and you'll find a 5-second video clip of one of my favorite internet viral videos of all time. Okay. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, a couple of things. If you're watching with us live today, appreciate you being here on this Halloween afternoon. Do us a favor, hit that retweet button, hit that like button, whatever you can do. Send the link to a buddy. We need to get as many eyeballs on this video live as humanly possible. And if you're watching on Facebook or on Twitter, make sure to head on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. That's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. You can join the conversation like Carlos and Wyatt already have in the comment section over there. That is where you can be a part of the conversation today. Any questions, comments, queries you might have about this Titans team, about this big Thursday Night Football matchup, we'd love to hear from you. One last housekeeping note. We've got to thank our wonderful and amazing sponsors here at the Hot Read Podcast, Boom Boss Craft Pizza and Tap House. We will be live there this Thursday evening before the Titans take on the Steelers on Thursday Night Football, as we always are, but it's a very, very special edition of our Thursday live show at Boom Boss in Spring Hill, because of course the Titans are one of the teams playing. We'll be recapping at 5:30, as we always do, previewing at 5:30 all of the things you need to know about this game, and then we'll have a big watch party with anybody that chooses to come out and watch the Titans with us. If you're in the Nashville area, it's just a quick 20-25 minute trip down the interstate, very easy drive to come to Boom Boss Craft Pizza and Tap House in Spring Hill. We'd love for you to come hang out, get some free gift cards, get some free Titans Oilers merch. Just show up and you're going to have a very good chance of not only having a great time. In fact, I guarantee you'll have a great time, but a very good chance at some free stuff in the process. So thank you to Boom Boss for sponsoring the show. All right. We've gotten all the housekeeping out of the way. I have one non-Steelers topic that I want to run by you, Junnie. I want to get your thoughts on. It's one that I teased on the Sunday show. It was frankly what I had teed up before the Titans played on Sunday for a big portion of our reaction show. And then, of course, Will Levis going scorched earth just tanked any plans that we had to reorganize the show and talk about what was the news of the day, and Will Levis having a fantastic debut. So this got bumped to today, but it's an important one nonetheless, and it's a timely one because this is something we heard talked about a lot last week as the Titans were coming up on that Atlanta game. They were 2-4, pretty directionless. Of course, Ryan Tannehill hurt. A lot of buzz about this team being sellers at the deadline. Where is Derrick Henry going to be? Where is DeAndre Hopkins going to be? Are they going to move some of these defensive pieces? A lot can change from one game. And of course, the trade deadline as of recording, we are now we are 75 minutes past that deadline. The Titans did not make any further moves beyond trading away Kevin Byard early last week. And this made me think, it made me think before the trade deadline. And now, certainly now that they've not made any moves, it makes me think it even more. Junnie, think back with me to the spring when Rand Carthen is getting ready to embark upon his first NFL draft as the man in charge. And we've got all of the news, all of the rumors, all of the leaks coming out about what this Titans team may do. It was a lot of, are they going to move up into the top 5 picks and try to go after a CJ Stroud? Do they have their eyes on Anthony Richardson, perhaps, and maybe they trade up for him? Maybe the Titans trade back and go after a guy that they've shown some interest in like Zay Flowers, for example. Maybe they bolster their wide receivers. Maybe they trade up for a Paris Johnson Jr. to get a left tackle of the future. There were a lot of rumors flying about what this team would and wouldn't do. Do they have their eyes on Will Levis? And then, of course, day 2, a lot of rumors the Titans want to move up for Will Levis, and then they do. There was a lot of news, and a lot of it didn't come to fruition. And so back then, my takeaway from that circus was, okay, Rand Carthen runs a pretty different ship in terms of leaks, in terms of information, than what John Robinson did. With John Robinson, it was very much a nothing gets out style operation, right? It was keep everything in-house. We don't want anything getting to the media unless we specifically want it to be in their hands. With Rand Carthen in the spring, I learned, and I feel like many of us learned, that his approach was kind of the opposite. It was leak everything, truths, lies, and everything in between. Just hit them with an offensive attack of information where there's contradiction from different reporters, different outlets have different things. And did this come from Vrabel? Did this one come from Rand Carthen? Like, who's in charge here? What are the Titans actually wanting to do? We saw that at this trade deadline, right? It's Henry might be moved. They've been given a very nice offer. Actually, the Titans want a 3rd and nobody's offered them a day 2 pick. Well, maybe DeAndre Hopkins goes to a team like the Chiefs who's wanting to contend. Maybe the Bills look after DeAndre Hopkins. Denico Autry could be, I could go on and on forever. So many rumors. And at the end of the day, they moved Kevin Byard, a guy who they kind of laid the groundwork to move in the summer, and they don't make any additional moves. The question is this: do you feel like I'm right to say we'd forgotten from the spring the way that Rand Carthen operates, and this is how we should assume he's going to work with the media going forward? And number 2, what do you make of the Titans not making any additional moves besides shipping off Kevin Byard?
Well, I think from what we have seen from this Titans organization, especially since, to your point, to the beginning of the draft, that things are going to get out and things are going to get released to the media. And I think that that's just going to be part of the norms that Titans fans are going to have to deal with. Now, for me personally, is it just Rand Carthon going to, his media outlet, or is it a combativeness between Vrabel going to his outlet, saying one thing, and then Carthon going to another? For me, I just
do you buy that? Do you think that there's been a little bit of a power struggle in that way?
No, because personally, I think Vrabel has the last say before it goes to Amy. That's how I have a view on it. He won the battle struggle. It's always coach and GM. Who's going to last longer? He lasted longer than John Robinson. So I think with him being the senior member of the staff and being the head coach of this team, being the most likable personality going into this Titans season, I feel like Mike Vrabel has the final say unless it's a decision that ultimately has to go to Amy Adams Strunk. Now, to your second point, with am I okay with them not making another move after the Kevin Byard trade? Number one, I didn't want them to trade Kevin Byard. I thought it was a silly move. I thought that Kevin Byard was worth more to the team, not necessarily what he's worth on the trade market, because I think what they got in return was a decent return for what Kevin Byard is.
It's not that you disagree with the return. You just wouldn't have moved him, period.
I wouldn't have moved him, period. I just feel and you've been in the locker room, I've been in the locker room with this team, and we both know the utmost importance that he has had. And I feel like from a leadership standpoint and from keeping the guys on track and just kind of keeping that positive voice when things are going wrong, I felt like he was an important aspect to that. And so letting him go, I was not a proponent of, and I felt like that was a sign of the Titans kind of waving the white flag. I really did, up until this game against Atlanta. Now, with it going through to Atlanta, knowing what we know now with, Tannehill not being able to play and the injury, I didn't want them to move off guys like Hopkins or Henry, because putting in a guy like Will Levis, he needs those guys to be able to thrive in this offense. The offensive line is already bad enough, and we knew this going into the season that they weren't going to be good enough to kind of get this offense to where they wanted to go. So for me, having veterans like that can bring you high productivity is the perfect thing for a young rookie quarterback to be able to thrive. So I'm glad that they didn't make any moves. I think it was the right move to make to continue, because you don't want receiver and running back and all these other positions on the offense to be an extra liability, knowing that your offensive line is the best and you want to get the most. And you want to get the most out of your rookie quarterback, and you don't want to wreck his confidence either. So I think them staying here was the primary reason. And Will Levis's performance just kind of, added on to the fact of why you didn't make those moves.
I absolutely understand the reasoning there, right? Wanting to set your young quarterback up, not just for success, but give him the best situation for him to thrive, have his best shot at proving himself. And from a selfish standpoint, you, the coach, you, the GM, putting him in a situation where you feel like you can fairly make an evaluation of what he is and then make a determination as to whether or not he's your future or not. I disagree with you a little bit in the sense that I do think that I don't have a super strong opinion on it. Frankly, I think at this point with this team, I could take it or leave it. I totally would have understood them moving a Tier Tart or a Danico Autry, a guy on an expiring contract. Only players, if they had managed to get anything for Christian Fulton, which I don't think that was for lack of trying. I think it was for lack of offers. If a player is not in your plans for the future and they are on an expiring contract, moving them for value now instead of letting them walk for nothing, I would have understood. Offensively, I'm more along the lines of your thinking, where these weapons, these pieces to help Will Levis be in the best situation. Again, this is all banking on them continuing to play Levis, and the pressure from the media, the pressure from the fans, as long as this big asterisk here, but as long as Will Levis continues to show promise and look to our eyes like the guy that you need to let play the rest of the year to know what you have in him, then that tracks. There's still the little birdie in the back of my head that says, he's a rookie. He's very liable to stumble. It's going to happen eventually, whether it's this Thursday night, whether it's the following game. He's going to have a bad performance somewhere. You just know he is. It's the nature of the game, and he's the kind of quarterback. He was a prospect coming out in particular that a lot of folks much smarter than me identified as the kind of quarterback you need to go out there and let make some mistakes in order for him to learn. But that birdie tells me as soon as he does and Tannehill's healthy, you can't tell me Vrabel's not going to think about swapping him back out, especially if the Titans are winning some games and they feel like they could compete for the division. Is this a concern that you think is warranted?
It is most definitely a concern, but I am giving the Titans organization and Mike Vrabel in general the benefit of the doubt until that decision is made. So for me, I thought when the Titans were sitting at 2-4 and they had just lost in London to the Baltimore Ravens, that this season was going to be basically over. I didn't know the extent of what Tannehill's injury was going to be until a day or so later when it came out that it was very similar to his injury that he had sustained in 2022. So I figured that he was going to miss a game or two. Then my focus went to, well, how does this debut go for Will Levis? Because how this debut goes is going to be the direction of this Titans team, in my opinion, for the rest of the year. If he goes out and shows you that he is not ready, then you go back to Tannehill and you go back to the same original plan of trying to ride this out. But he went out there and he did something that only two other quarterbacks in NFL history have done, and throw for 4 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in their debut. Right. Now the focal point of the Titans need to be is to see what you have in Will Levis and to build his confidence up enough to where when some of these veterans, maybe DeAndre, likely Derrick Henry. I think they should personally bring Derrick Henry back on a short-term, cheaper deal to kind of keep this thing going. But for me personally, Easton, I think when you saw that performance, the Titans' focal point went from, well, are we going to, ship everybody out? Or are we going to try and make a comeback like we did in 2019 when we started the year 2-4? I think the focal point switched from, it doesn't matter where this team goes as long as we see the development and the progression of the young quarterback that just absolutely blew the minds of Titans Nation at Nissan Stadium this past Sunday. I think that needs to be the focal point of this season. Wins and losses to me do not matter. The future is here, and it is here now. We're not asking Will Levis to take you to the playoffs. We're not asking Will Levis to take you to the Super Bowl. What we are asking for is for him to go through the ebbs and flows and to figure his way through this and to try and get him going into the next season as the full-time starter with the utmost confidence.
Yeah, I'm with you. You're looking for answers. That's the key this season, and hopefully they stick with the path most conducive to finding those answers. All right, let's talk about the Yinzers. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Titans will be playing in Pittsburgh this Thursday night, a very big game and a very quick turnaround for a team coming off of a big win with a rookie quarterback who, big debut, great start, really difficult spot to have to turn around on a short week like this and go into an atmosphere like that to have to perform. And given the Titans' track record on the road this season, doesn't bode well. Maybe they break that streak this week. But let's look at some of the numbers here, and then I want to get your 10,000-foot view on this team because we talked about it a little bit, you and I, in the press conference at the end of the game this weekend. What exactly the Titans will be seeing defensively from this Steelers team. You used a word that I thought was very appropriate. That the defense is not good; they're opportunistic. So I want you to elaborate on that in a minute. But just some numbers. The Titans have not won in Pittsburgh since 2013. They're 0-4 against them in their past 4 games. Most recently, they played them in a very big, I believe it was 5-0 versus 5-0 matchup in 2020 when Pittsburgh came to town and won.
They did play in 2021 in Pittsburgh.
Okay, so that was 2 times ago. Excuse me.
And that was in 2021. And the Titans, I believe that was one of their last losses of the year. But they went into that Pittsburgh game without AJ Brown and without Derrick Henry.
Okay, yeah, you're jogging my memory now. That's when they were all hurt. Absolutely. So yeah, they've played them a couple times in the recent past. They've not come up with a victory in those past 4 games. They're 3-8 against the Steelers since 2003. 1-5 in Pittsburgh since 2003. So a tough environment and a lopsided rivalry here, a lopsided series. Tell me about this Pittsburgh defense, which is the focus of, Will Levis will be going up against these guys, a different group than what he saw in Atlanta. In some cases, I would say a better group, especially in terms of pass rush and the guys that he's got to worry about when he drops back to pass. But as you pointed out to me on Sunday, this defense is not as strong as you might think based on the players on the roster.
No, and when I use opportunistic, again, it is the perfect term for this team. I mean, they're 27th against the run, allowing 137.1 yards per game. They're 24th in pass defense, and they were honestly a lot worse than that before they started playing their rookie corner, Joey Porter Jr., who has come in and he's played pretty well, but they're still 24th in the league.
Man. Yeah.
Yes, he has looked very good. The passer rating when he's getting thrown to up until this past week was a whopping 0.0. So he's been getting targeted a lot and been really good. So 245 yards passing allowed per game. And so when you kind of culminate that, they're around the 28th best defense in the league. So, they're not looking really good. But here's where they get teams is that they have a plus 7 turnover differential, and that's where they get you. Like when you look at this game that they had against the Jags, the Jags had multiple opportunities to put up some points, some of which were right there in the red zone. They turned the ball over 3 times in their own territory that the Steelers capitalized and kept them from scoring points. So that is what this team has been doing all year long to get wins without some of their opportunistic turnovers. I really see them being more of a one-win team. I mean, the only game that they have won without an opportunistic turnover was in week 3 against the Raiders. And so that's really been the key as to why this defense has been somewhat sustainable this year.
Yeah, it feels like every single game you watch of the Steelers this season and in the past couple of seasons, it's, oh, would you look at that? The defense scored a touchdown somehow, whether it was a fumble recovery or a pick six, or, I mean, to be frank, the Steelers have relied in a couple of games on their defense scoring for them because Lord knows the offense wasn't capable of doing it. This Matt Canada offense has been a topic of much discussion this year because, well, they're chanting "Fire Matt Canada" from the stands every week in Pittsburgh, and this offense is notorious for, unless they've broken it in the past couple of weeks and I've lost track, I don't think Matt Canada as an offensive coordinator has ever had an offense put up more than 400 yards in a single game. Is this still accurate?
No, so I believe it has been 54 games straight that he has not put up a 400-yard game, and that has been his entire tenure since he was hired in 2021. So yeah, no, the offense has been terrible. But to be honest with you, and I got to be frank about this, Matt Canada bears all the blames, but this has been more of what Mike Tomlin, the head coach, likes to call the popcorn effect. It has to do with Kenny Pickett. Sometimes he's missing passes and just missing reads and overthrowing people and not being the most accurate quarterback. Sometimes it's the running game, the Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren not hitting the proper holes and missing opportunities and not getting going in the running game. Other times it's the receivers being lazy, not following through with their routes and dropping balls, or the offensive line just letting out free rushers and not having the proper scheme for the front that they're seeing. It seems to be it's always one thing or the other. And although Matt Canada's offensive scheme is how a lot of professionals would call it, Saturday-esque, more of a college-based scheme. Right. There's a lot of lack of execution that has to be put on display as well for the woes that the Steelers have had on offense. And although he's not putting them in the best predicament, the players aren't doing themselves any favors either.
So let me wrap up with this question, then we'll get you out of here. Looking ahead to this game, knowing what you know about both of these teams, what comes to mind for you first, or maybe the couple of things where it's like, that's going to be the key to this game? Is this going to be a game that's won in the trenches? Is it going to be a ball control game? Is it going to be which team's offensive weapons can produce in that big moment that is necessary in the game? I know the total in this game is currently at 37. The weather kind of questionable. It's going to be chilly. But otherwise, pretty good football atmosphere, it seems like. Low-scoring game between two teams whose offenses have been suspect this year. What do you think the keys to victory for either team will be in this one?
So the keys to victory, I'll start with the Titans. And this kind of goes hand in hand. So the way I see the Titans getting a victory here is, one, running their offense through Derrick Henry. Again, I already talked to you about how the Steelers are the 27th best run defense in the league. They have not been really good at all in that area. And I believe Derrick Henry is going to be the best back outside of maybe Nick Chubb in week 2 that they have seen all season long. So if they really ride Derrick Henry, and they do not allow opportunities for the Steelers to create turnovers, which is what has really won them ball games this year. And if they can get out to an early lead, that is going to be the key for the Titans. Okay. For the Steelers, on the other hand, they are going to do their best to disrupt Will Levis. And if Will Levis in this blocking scheme does not shapen up, to protect him from guys like TJ Watt, obviously Alex Highsmith, and a bunch of other guys that are on this defensive front, it's going to be a long day. They have got to stick with the run if the Titans want a chance in this match. Junie,
by the way, based on the success that Will Levis had passing deep so often this past week, I'm not an expert, but hear me out. I have a feeling maybe there'll be a couple more too high safety looks this week from the Steelers. I think they may want to take that away from Levis and force him to beat them underneath. I don't think you have to be an expert to see that one coming, right?
They're gonna play very conservatively because they lost Minkah Fitzpatrick with a hamstring in this matchup, so he will not be playing. But on the tail end of this, I do need to bring up quarterback Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett spoke with the media today, and he said that, he's going to be out there. He is basically putting himself in the game.
He seemed confident. Yeah.
And so here's what I want to say about
Is that
Kenny
a good
Pickett.
thing? Is hobbled Kenny Pickett better than Mitch Trubisky? What do we think about
Very
that?
much so.
Okay.
Very much so. So Mitch Trubisky last year, he's a turnover machine, and that's just something that Kenny Pickett is not. A lot of people talk about Kenny Pickett and his small hands and how that can be a fumbling issue. Well, Kenny Pickett's only fumbled the ball 5 times in the past 2 seasons, and he's only fumbled once this year, which was this past game against the Jags, where he fumbled the ball out of bounds. So I wouldn't really say that he is prone to fumble. But here's the key thing about Kenny Pickett, which is just mind-boggling to Steeler fans and to everybody. The guy in quarters 1 through 3 looks like a quarterback that borderline shouldn't be in the NFL. But when it becomes the fourth quarter, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL, Easton.
That's gotta be so frustrating to watch every week. It's got to be so frustrating.
Listen to these stats because it's crazy. In quarters 1 through 3, this season only, he has completed 56.2% of his passes. He has a 4-to-3 touchdown to interception ratio and a passer rating of 45.8. In the fourth quarter only this year, he has completed 73% of his passes for 374 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick that came in week 1 against the San Francisco 49ers, and a passer rating of 102.8. That is almost double the amount of quarters of 1 through 3. It's crazy.
He's twice as good a quarterback in the fourth quarter as he is the rest of the
Steeler
game.
Fans and the like. We just don't get it.
He's twice as good in the fourth quarter is what I'm hearing. I mean,
he also has started 19 games, 2 of which he has not finished the game. He has 6 fourth quarter comebacks in 19 games as a starter.
So clutch.
6 fourth quarter comebacks. He's clutch. I don't know what else to tell you.
But he's also a big part of the reason they're in these situations in the first place.
Yes, right? Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
All right, that's fantastic, Junnie. We have really appreciated having you today. I know that you've got some trick-or-treating to do with the little ones, so I'm going to let you go have a good time on this Halloween evening. Guys, check him out, Junnie Riddle of 102.5 The Game. You can check him out. Junnie, plug your show for us, by the way. When do the people need to tune into the radio to hear you talking ball?
Yeah, so you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. You can also be on the radio dial at 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. I'm apart with my guy, Nick Keyser, Riddle, and the reporter. We go live every Friday from 6 to 8. And if we do have any scheduling conflicts, we always do post on Twitter ahead of time to let people know when we will be on the air. Because sometimes with Vanderbilt and the Preds and all that stuff that we carry on our stations, sometimes we have conflicting issues when it comes to those teams. So
fantastic, pal. Hey, it was great to talk to you, and we'll have you back on the show soon. All right.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Easton.
All right. That was Junnie Riddle of 102.5 The Game. And while my buddy, producer JT, gets himself situated and gets himself in here, I've got to remind you here at the halftime of today's show, we are brought to you by Boomba's Craft Pizza and Tap House, the place in Spring Hill where you can come and enjoy a watch party with us. Me and JT. There he is. JT, how's it going, my friend?
Hello.
Can you hear me? There
How
we go.
is it going?
How are we doing?
Yeah, I can hear you. How's it going?
Okay.
It's been a very spooktacular Halloween so far for me, and by spooktacular, I mean frustrating day. But we get through it. Maybe the joy of seeing the little ones trick or treat today will bring some Halloween magic into my heart. Maybe I'm
knowing you. I'm really not.
No, maybe I'm the Ebenezer Scrooge of Halloween. Can that be a thing?
But if you're the Scrooge of Halloween, that just means you're good at Halloween because it's supposed to be about not joy. It's supposed to be fear and sadness, right? I mean, so maybe you're just an elite Halloween ghoul. I don't know. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like it's your holiday, regardless. I'll tell you what, today might be frustrating and scary for you, but won't be frustrating or scary when we get to watch the Titans with all of our best friends in the world at Boomba's in Spring Hill on Thursday, just 2 days away from our watch party where we will be giving away during our live preview show at 5:30 there at Boomba's some free gift cards, some Titans Oilers merch, and more. Cannot wait to see you guys there. Again, the live show starts at 5:30 at Boomba's. Come hang out and talk Titans and get a drink or two in you before they kick off at 7:15, I believe, in Pittsburgh against the Steelers, and we'll be watching the entire game with you there in person. It's going to be a fantastic time. If you're watching with us live today, we're about to recap some of the trade deadline happenings from today. A lot of teams not named the Titans were involved, and we will discuss what was and was not a good trade. But before we do, if you're watching with us live, go on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Hit subscribe, by the way. We know lots and lots of y'all aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel, and it costs you nothing to be. It just costs a single click of your mouse on that subscribe button. Hit the bell, too, while you're at it to get notifications when we have shows and clips from the show up on YouTube, so you can check out all of our content all the time here at Broadway Sports Media and here at the Hot Read Podcast. Appreciate those of you that are with us live. And if you have thoughts on today's trade deadline, jump into the comment section. We would love to hear your thoughts. All right, JT, you have, as always, your news with producer JT segment prepared. Today, a very special trade deadline episode of said news segment. So without further ado, let's get into the news with producer JT.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Titans, who had a pretty relaxing and boring day at the trade deadline. As you said, Titans fans can rest easy because Derrick Henry does not get traded. DeAndre Hopkins does not get traded. Even other guys like Danico Autry, Tier Tart, Christian Fulton, and the list goes on, does not get traded today. As we find out, Kevin Byard was the only move of the deadline for the Titans.
Can I just say, while we're on this, before we move on to their teams, I mean, we did say on this show, on the day of, actually the day after the Kevin Byard trading, we said, we're not convinced that this trade was indicative of the Titans being all in on being sellers of the deadline, being all in on the rebuild, on the tear down, on the ship off your expiring contracts for pennies train. This was not a fire sale then, and in the end, it didn't turn out to be a fire sale at all. And that rational response from us, which I know a couple of folks who watch this show, I'm thinking of you, Kenneth, giving us a hard time for saying that we were bitter clingers to this team, just like Coach Mike Vrabel was perceived to have potentially been. You just needed to let it go and quit trying to salvage this season. In reality, we were just being rational, logical, playing the odds, and the odds were that move that was set up in the summer that shouldn't have shocked anybody, that they were looking since June, when they asked for a pay cut and then ultimately restructured his contract to make an out after this year the likely reality. That shouldn't have been shocking that they ultimately moved him, and the timing just happened to be kind of coincidental. And that's not to say that I don't think they considered any other moves. I think they did. But the idea that they were people don't know what a fire sale. When there's a fire sale, when you get a moving sale, it's, the Belk in your local shopping mall. Everything's 85% off. You're getting stuff for pennies on the dollar. Titans clearly weren't interested in doing that today, and so they didn't make any moves.
Yeah, and we can move on now to some moves that the Titans did make today, which is the only transactions they made today. They officially
don't
signed
say the Titans
linebacker
didn't move
Chance
on
Campbell
deadline day. They made some big time moves.
Those moves include signing Chance Campbell and defensive back Shaheem Carter to their practice squad. Pretty standard procedure here that we've come to know and love during this section of the show. So far, nothing really to report there. However, we can talk about the injury report for today, as a couple Titans did not practice once again. Chris Hubbard with the concussion, definitely not going to go this week because of that concussion, not having practice yet this week, probably will not practice tomorrow, even if they do. Other two players that did not practice today, Chris Moore not practicing for personal reasons, so non-injury related, and then Ryan Tannehill not practicing. He will not go this week, as we've already learned that Will Levis will once again be starting. On the other side of the ball, Minkah Fitzpatrick is the big one for the Steelers, as he has not practiced yet this week, will not go in all likelihood this week, dealing with a hamstring injury. However, that's not the only news for the Steelers, as they look to get defensive lineman Cam Hayward back from a groin injury that sidelined him on IR this season. He is now upgraded to a full participation today. So even if the Steelers lose Minkah Fitzpatrick, they look to add to that defensive line with Cam Hayward this week.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Hayward on IR. eligible, I believe, to come back if he is cleared. I'm not saying he will be by Thursday, but with him practicing in full today, it was full, correct? Did he practice this today?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an indicator they may be getting him back for this game, and that would be a significant help for them, not just on the run defense side of the coin, where they've been pretty miserable so far this year, but in affecting that quarterback, getting after Will Levis, getting him off schedule, and giving him some more pressure than the Falcons were able to in his first outing. It's gonna change the picture for Levis, and I'm very, very curious to see what he looks like when things aren't going so well.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for our Titans news. We can move on to the headlines of the trade deadline today, and we're going to go down these 6 most important or prominent trades that happened today. And Easton, I'm going to ask you, was it a good trade or a bad trade for these 2 teams? And we'll start with the Washington Commanders, who talk about a fire sale. If there was one team, it is the Washington Commanders. They offload 2 cornerstone defensive line pieces, starting with the Chicago Bears being buyers, even though they are actively trying to tank this season.
Sure, why
Washington,
not? I mean, yeah.
Washington trades defensive lineman Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears for a 2nd-round pick, the 30, which if the season ended right now today, it would be the 35th overall pick. Your thoughts on this deal?
I think it's a good trade for Washington. They clearly, and we're about to talk another big move up front on defense that they made here in a second, but they decided to be sellers at the deadline. It sounds like the ownership group had a pretty strong hand in turning this team's ship towards the future and not focusing on trying to salvage anything right now. Montez Sweat for a top 40 pick on an expiring contract, a guy who's been very available and very effective. I think it's a good deal for Washington to move him and get that top 40 pick in return. Now, for Chicago to have given up a top 40 pick for Montez Sweat, like you mentioned, when they're rebuilding, I don't know what I've been trying to find the angle from which you can say this was a good trade. I think it was a terrible trade. This is a guy that was going to be a free agent, and the Chicago Bears, had a lot of money to spend this upcoming offseason. He's the kind of guy you could have brought in and paid an extension to without having to give up a top 40 pick. Now, they're not strapped for picks, so I mean, it's not like they are, 1 first, 1 second, 1 third. I forget the exact numbers, but this is a drop in the bucket in terms of their draft capital this year. They're in good shape, but in a vacuum, it's an overpay, and even worse than an overpay, in my opinion. Again, it's overpay because you have to now extend this player. It's just bad process and a lack of recognition, of where this team is in their team building cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. This, as I tweeted out this morning, it's a very Brody Van Wagenen 2019 Mets idea of how to
that's a niche
kind of
take.
build your team.
I like it. Niche take.
Including being buyers while you are you're trying to buy players like they did with Marcus Stroman, even though you actively sucked. So it didn't work out well for the Mets, and nothing usually does. So maybe it'll work out for the Chicago Bears. Question mark. I have a hard time seeing Montez Sweat wanting to stay around after this year, but who knows? Maybe they.
He's a very good player, and he's going to be nice for that team, and he's going to make a lot of money. But I just the timing, the process, I don't like it. Yeah.
Yes, we can move on to the other Washington Commander that was dealt today, and that was Chase Young, who gets dealt to San Francisco for a 3rd-round pick. Which will be
Roger, you got to do it for us, buddy. Veto this trade.
That is one of their compensation picks that they get for losing Mike McGlinchey, and they also have one that they will get this season for losing both D'Amico Ryan and Rand Carthen in the offseason. So they will be receiving one of those 2.
Yeah, for Chicago to 10 seconds later have seen San Francisco move for Chase Young for a conditional 3rd-round pick that's going to be like in the 80s, 90s if the season ended today, when they just sent a top 40 pick for Montez Sweat. that has to hurt. That has to sting a little bit, right? Like the one thing you can see for, and I joke about vetoing because this feels unfair. The one thing you can see here clearly is that if the best that the Washington Commanders could get for Young was that conditional 3rd round pick from San Francisco, it may be a top 90 pick. Like, teams around the league are concerned about this guy's availability. Teams around the league are concerned about this guy's health status right now. But San Francisco has the luxury of being the highest bidder here because not only do they have the space for him money-wise and the pick that they're willing to give up, and they're just 3rd round pick rich because of how much compensatory pick action they've got in the past couple of years. They really only need him to help win a Super Bowl this year. Like, this is an all-in kind of move. And as you mentioned, if he leaves in free agency after this year when his rookie contract is up, they could then recoup that 3rd round pick in the form of another compensatory pick in 2025. So it's a savvy move. It's a very savvy move by the 49ers front office, who is a savvy group. And it is, I don't necessarily want to say it's a bad trade for Washington because you get what you can get from him. It's an expiring contract player who's been unavailable a lot. To get a day 2 pick, you take it. But for San Fran, I mean, that's the kind of move where we could be looking up in late January this year. And would you look at that? Chase Young had 2 sacks, and it was a key part of their victory over the Eagles to win the NFC Championship game. Like, that's the kind of move that this is, and it should bother the rest of the league.
We can move on now to maybe an even bigger trade. My biggest trade of the day, the Minnesota Vikings acquiring Joshua Dobbs from the Arizona Cardinals. For a 6th round pick. Minnesota gets Joshua Dobbs and a 7th round pick for the Arizona Cardinals to upgrade to a 6th round pick. Joshua Dobbs looks to be the guy, not at least this week, as they announced Jaron Hall will be starting this week.
They did say that?
The Vikings. Gross. Yes. But Joshua Dobbs will look to be the starter after this week and maybe get this Vikings team to a playoff berth. I do not know.
Listen, our buddies at the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Danny Kelly in particular, loves to push this bit about Josh Dobbs where he's in Quantum Leap, which is like one of those B-rate weekly episodic series on like NBC or CBS or something, where the guy he jumps through time into other people's bodies and just assumes their life. Like, that's what Josh Dobbs is. He's like, he jumps into Tennessee and immediately assumes the starting position. Then he quantum leaps into Arizona. Now he's quantum leaping up to Minnesota. I get my brother Caden texted me today. He goes, why do teams, 1, want this guy so bad when they're in desperate need of a quarterback? But 2, more importantly, why are teams so comfortable giving this guy the reins like immediately? And it's a fair question, and it's a good point. I mean, he's a rocket scientist. He's smart. I guess the idea is he's a savvy, safe veteran who's going to learn the system quickly and be able to be on his feet and be capable. He's shown it twice now with Tennessee and with Arizona. It's a good, fine move from Minnesota. As an owner, and you're in the same boat of some Minnesota skill position players in fantasy football. I like this much better than the prospect of Jaron Hall throw into these guys the rest of the year. Josh Dobbs, I feel like, can actually make these guys somewhat productive and salvage those assets. So that's good, I guess. But in general, a desperation move from Minnesota, not one that's indicative of them trying to be all in this year. You're not all in with Josh Dobbs, but he's a serviceable guy to fill in a pinch.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, like he was with Cleveland to begin this year. And then 2 weeks before
what
the
would
season,
Cleveland's record be today if they kept him?
Trade.
It's an interesting question, right?
That's a good question. That is a good question.
They didn't have to toil with PJ Walker, and they had a reliable Josh Dobbs to lean on with all of this nonsense with Deshaun Watson.
Definitely, I think they would
win
have
another game
a
or
better
two?
shot. I think they'd have a better shot in the Ravens game than when they had DTR, right?
Yes.
Like I think they would have had a better shot. But like you said, like Cleveland trades him to Arizona 2 weeks before the season starts. He is their starter, and he is pretty capable for this Cardinals team. I like Jacob saying he is the new Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, kind of like he kind of is turning into that, you know. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's probably a little better than Josh Dobbs still.
I mean, Dobbs now has, but in terms of journeyman collection,
yeah,
I mean,
like
Josh
the new
Dobbs has
age
a Steelers
Ryan
jersey.
Fitzpatrick.
He's got a Titans jersey. He's got a Browns jersey.
Yes.
He's got a Cardinals jersey. Now he's got a Vikings jersey. He's still got plenty left in the tank. He could get to 10, 12, 14 jerseys by things are all said and done. You never know.
Indeed, he could. We can move on now to a trade that impacts the AFC South here with Jacksonville acquiring left guard Ezra Cleveland from Minnesota for a 6th-round pick, and they also send a guard back to Minnesota. So Jacksonville getting some much-needed offensive line help for Trevor Lawrence and this offense. Your thoughts on this trade and how much it moves the needle for the current leaders of the AFC South?
I'm sorry, but I'm going to let the intrusive thoughts win real quick. The first thought I had is on both of the last 2 trades you mentioned. Whenever you say the word Minnesota, because I'm so chronically online, all I can hear is the Joe Biden clip where he goes, Minnesota. That's what I hear every time. So yeah, Minnesota buyers and sellers today. Moving Ezra Cleveland is indicative, I think, further of them like looking to the future some. For the Jags, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say I'm a big Ezra Cleveland expert. I know he's a young guard who's shown a lot of promise. I don't know yet whether or not he's going to be slipping in as a starter or going to be really, really nice depth. I'm looking online at folks who are on the Jags and Minnesota side of things here and whose job it is to actually dive deep on these things. I'm getting some mixed signals as to whether or not he's going to be a spot starter or whether or not he's going to be really nice depth for them. But either way, protecting Trevor Lawrence and bolstering your offensive line depth when you are 6-2 and looking to win the division and go into the playoffs strong, it's a very good idea. So I think it's a good move for both teams, but certainly for Jacksonville, that's the right idea.
We can move on now to another one here where Cleveland gets in on some of the action today, sending Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Motor City Kitties for
DPJ.
a 2025 6th-round pick. So not even this year's draft, next year. Basically, tough, Detroit getting Donovan Peoples-Jones for free. Your thoughts on this acquisition for the Lions?
Yeah, man, I think that the Lions won this trade walking away. I think that Cleveland got fleeced. Maybe I'm crazy. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is a good receiver. I think he's a very serviceable 3 or 4 in your system. I think he's very much a Nick Westbrook-Ikhine in the right situation. He's going to ball and he's going to eat and it's going to be sneaky. Like maybe we should cover that guy because he's kind of tearing us apart today. I feel like this year with the quarterback uncertainty and the more crowded wide receiver room that he was dealing with in Cleveland than in previous years, that's part of the reason why you haven't seen a lot of him. But in Detroit, first of all, shout out Jameson Williams. Like, J-Mo, what's going on? Like, clearly this move is indicative of them thinking they need some more there. And Jameson Williams adding to the fold is not going to cut it for them as a team that is also 6-2, I believe. They're second place in the NFC right now, and they're looking to make a playoff run and some depth at wide receiver for Jared Goff. Not a bad idea. Detroit absolutely won this trade.
Finally, the last trade we're going to talk about here between Buffalo and Green Bay as Buffalo acquires secondary defensive back Rasul Douglas and a 5th-round pick, and they send a 3rd-round pick to Green Bay. So Buffalo, who has lost a lot of important starters, getting some secondary help here. Your thoughts on the acquisition for the playoff hopeful Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, the Bills had to make this move, so totally understand them going after Rasul. It's good that they have something that on defense, they've lost so much depth, especially on the defensive back side of the coin. They've needed some bodies the past couple of weeks, and Rasul Douglas is a very nice one. I think that a Rasul Douglas and a 5th for a 3rd swap is a fair value. I think it's good for both teams. I think if anything, you could argue that Buffalo kind of got away with one if Rasul plays up to the level that you could reasonably expect him to play, and if he fits in really well really quickly, if he's a scheme fit there, which it sounds like he is, he could be, if we see Buffalo make a run here at the end of the year, he could be another player where that's a big part of it. They need Rasul out there. He's helping lock down that secondary. Without him, they're in some trouble, and in the past couple of weeks, that's been the case. Without him or anybody else, they've been in some real trouble. So good trade for Buffalo, a necessary trade for Buffalo. And
that's going to do it for our trade deadline headline wrap up.
All right, that is producer JT with the trade deadline headline wrap up news, Titans news, all of the words, all of the titles. Appreciate everybody that tuned in with us live today. This is the last time I have to tell you guys without actually being there and doing the thing. You got 2 days, a little less than 2 days, to figure out your affairs, get your affairs in order, get your plans set to come and join us at Boom Ba's Craft Pizza and Tap House in Spring Hill. Again, if you're in the Nashville area, depending on where you are, it's like a 20-30 minute drive down the interstate. Very easy to come down straight off the interstate, straight off of 65. It is fantastic. You get some fantastic prices for some fantastic food and beers on tap. It's going to be a great time. Of course, no better time to come and watch these Titans play on Thursday Night Football than with Billy Jeans making his second debut performance, or excuse me, his second performance after his debut this past weekend. Will he live up to the hype? Will he repeat? Will he come back down to earth? Come and watch live with us to find out. We would love to give you some free Titans Oilers merch, some gift cards so you can eat free on us. It's going to be a good time. All you got to do is come at 5:30 on Thursday, November 2nd, this upcoming Thursday, before the Titans take on the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. Come hang for the pregame show and then stick around to watch the game at the bar on one of the many very large screen TVs where you can watch and listen to what should be a very good game. All right, make sure you're subscribed over at Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Please, we keep begging it. We keep pushing it because we want to get this sub count up. A lot of you aren't subscribed. Please subscribe. It helps us. It costs nothing. And then follow us on social media at Hot Read Pod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. It's where you get show clips, show content, show updates, show announcements, all of the things you need for the show. Follow us at Hot Read Pod on all of those socials. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. Check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. This has been the Hot Read Podcast, and we will talk to you live from Boom Ba's Craft Pizza and Tap House on Thursday.